First thing that we are going to look at before we get into the details of layers are the reason and the concept of layers. So I'm going to be doing things over here on the layers panel, but don't worry about that yet. We're going to get into that in detail in other lessons. So we're just going to concentrate on the concept of layers for this lesson. Let's assume I have this picture of a red ruffed lemur at the Memphis Zoo, and maybe I've got a gig where they want a graphic made that they're going to put up at the zoo identifying this animal. And it's something I certainly could do in Photoshop. Let's say I wanted to add a graphic element to it, like a rectangular box. I might put some text in it or something. So let me pick my rectangular marquee tool. Let me position it where I want it. And then let's say we're going to fill it with some sort of color. So I'll go to Edit, Fill, and I'll just pick what's on the foreground right now, which is white, and say OK. Right now, I've got a big problem because if I don't like what I've done with this, there's nothing I can do about it. If I save this photograph right now, with this big white box on it, that is the only way it's going to look. It is a destructive workflow. It has actually overwritten these pixels of the bark right here. There's nothing I can do later to fix it. Also notice if I wanted to move this box around, I can move the selection, but I can't move the box. I had one shot at it. So again, not very flexible. So how would we do this working with layers? Well, let me go back to our Wayback Machine here and get rid of all this. And let's add a blank layer. And you see layer 1, and you see this checkerboard pattern, which means it's clear. There's nothing on that layer. You can think of it as a clear piece of plastic over the photograph here. So let me go ahead and on this layer, on my new layer, and you can tell what layer you're working on because this is highlighted. So it's always, be aware of which layer you're on. When something's going wrong, you're probably on the wrong layer. So let's grab the marquee tool again, and let me put another rectangle in here. And let me position it. And this time I'm going to put a little different color on it. Change the foreground color. I'll go back to my fill and foreground. So I've got this, and you can see right here it's on a separate layer. Let me press Control D. So my marquee, my selection goes away. However, let me go up here, grab my move tool. Look. And you can see it moving over here. Now I can move this graphic element anywhere I want in the frame, and I'm not affecting the base photo because I'm basically moving it like a piece of clear plastic over the photo. So let's say I said, well, this is kind of too bright. I'd really kind of want a see-through look. I can go up to the opacity for that layer and take it down a little bit. That looks good. And again, because I'm working in layers and will save this with these multiple layers, I can come back at any time, change the opacity, move it around. So let's add another graphic element to it and go back there. I'm going to create another layer. Got layer 2, which is automatically selected for me. And I'm going to go to the ellipse tool this time. And holding the shift key down, which helps me draw a perfect circle. And let me fill it. I'm going to choose another color. Yeah, that looks good. Go to my fill menu and say fill it with the foreground color. There it is. Control D to deselect it. Grab my move tool, and now I can move it around. Move it any place in the photograph that I want, and I'm not affecting the photograph. And you can see here where it is positioned. Let's say I really wanted it behind this. No problem. The stacking order, excuse me, is absolutely controllable by you. So let me move layer 2 down in front of layer 1. And now you can see it's behind that layer. And wherever I move it, it's going to be behind that layer. Let me move it back to the way it was. Okay, now there are some things that create automatic layers. Some things in Photoshop where you don't have to create them yourself. Like one would be text. Say I want some text here. So let me put this down here. I'm going to go back to my default colors. So I want the text to be black, and let me put in red roughed. Okay, you can see here that I'm not getting any text. Well, why? Well, notice where I created the layer. I created it behind layer 2. So let me just move it up, and there it appears. And that's probably where I want it. So let me, on this layer, I can move it around, move the text around. And I think that looks good for me. Okay, so what you see here is I have 3 different elements that is not affecting the base photo. And in fact, you see these little eyes here. This lets us change the visibility. If I can take the text off, or I can take my little circle off, or I can take the whole thing off and just with the background. So there's a lot of flexibility in layers. I haven't affected the base photo. This was a graphic example, so you could see it quite easy. But what we're going to do at the end of this 3-part series is this is also what you can use to make common adjustments, targeted adjustments to your photographs, such as contrast and brightness and sharpness and different common photographic adjustments. So in the next lesson, we're going to take a look more at this layers panel and the mechanics of that.